The couple was expecting a baby, but what came out of the womb was an old man. White hair, a hoarse voice, and the first thing he asked for was a cane. The whole village stopped. The midwife fainted, and the father, he was mute for 3 days. But no one knew that this elderly son was part of a forgotten prophecy, and what he did in the following days will give you goosebumps. Backhand index pointing right. If you love mysterious and unbelievable stories, subscribe now. Like and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. This is the story of Kantare, the son who was born old. There are villages in Africa where time seems to go sideways. But in Kukawa, that day, time simply went back. Naima and Balaki waited for 12 long years. 12 cycles of silence, prayers, and bitter teas. And when Naima finally became pregnant, the village burst into celebration. Drums echoed for 3 nights. The healer danced until his feet bled. The elders sang, Naima's womb now carries tomorrow. But it did not carry tomorrow. On that hot morning, the expected cry did not come. What was heard was a throat clearing. Yes, an old man's throat clearing. The midwife came out trembling, pale, speechless. Balaki ran in. She stopped in the middle of the tent. Her knees gave out. Naima, wide-eyed, pointed to the mat. He asked for a cane, Balaki. What? He asked for a cane. There, wrapped in cotton cloth, was an old man. Wrinkled skin, white hair, worn teeth. And he said, You can turn off the fire. It's too hot in here. The village was thrown into chaos. Some said it was the spirit of a reincarnated ancestor. Others said it was a spell. And there were those who thought that Naima had become pregnant by a desert jinn. But the healer, Sarain Mamor, found an ancient parchment. He unrolled it carefully, removing the dust of centuries. He read in a low voice, as if afraid of waking the dead. When time forgets its path, an old man with fresh eyes will come into the world. He will speak like an old man, but will teach like a child. The child was named Kantare, which in the language of the ancients means the one who brings back. From the first day, Kantare did not cry. He complained, This mat is badly woven. This porridge is thin. Why doesn't anyone here know how to listen? People laughed nervously, but there was something in his eyes that made even the birds fall silent. Sometimes, he would say, Time doesn't want to run. It wants to remember. And in the days that followed, Kantare would begin to say things that no one had ever told him. Things that were buried. Things that no one would ever have the courage to say out loud. Kantare didn't crawl. He walked with his hands behind his back, like someone looking for glasses that he had forgotten in time. He didn't babble like a baby. He gave lectures. This year's corn will rot if you plant it during the waning moon. The well in the north is poisonous. It was thrown there by Kumba 27 years ago. Your grandmother's copper necklace is not lost. It is buried behind the 3rd stone from the west. With each sentence, the elders trembled. He spoke of things that only the dead knew. One night, while the full moon burned the sky, Kantare asked to go to the baobab of silence. He said he needed to talk to the ancient spirits. Balaki, even though scared, went with him. When he got there, the old boy sat down at the root of the baobab, closed his eyes and whispered, They are still here. They just haven't been heard for a long time. Total silence. Not even the crickets dared to sing. Out of nowhere, Kantare raised his hand and pointed to the sky. The eclipse will come, and when it comes, a name will be erased from the village. No one understood. But days later, Sainabu, the oldest woman in the village, known for hiding secrets, was found dead. Buried in her tent was the proof that she had betrayed her own people decades before. Kantare knew, and he saw what no one else could see. People began to fear and worship him at the same time. Some knelt before him. Others avoided him, as if he carried a spiritual plague. Mamor, the healer, went to Kantare and said, You are not of this time, boy. And he replied, Neither are you. You just forgot that. On the 10th day since his birth, Kantare asked for a fire. He sat down in the center of the village, alone. Today at midnight I will rest. But first, I will leave you a gift. What he left that night made the entire village cry. It made the old men kneel, and the young men, for the first time, listen without interrupting. But what was this gift? It was the 10th night. Kantare, the old boy, stood before the fire, in silence, his gaze fixed on the flames, as if he were talking to them. The entire village watched around him. Armed men, women holding hands, children in silence. Even the dogs were quiet. "Tonight," said Kantare, "time will leave its mark." He stood up with difficulty. His steps were heavy, as if he were carrying decades on his back. With the palm of his hand, he drew a circle in the earth and said, "No one should set foot here. This will be the place where oblivion will be buried." No one understood, until he took out from inside his tunic a piece of black bone, carved with unknown symbols. The healer, Mamur, paled when he saw the object. That is impossible. This bone was lost at the time of the great shattering." "It came back with me," replied Kantare. "And with it, the memories that time tried to hide came back." Rampushpin, the defining event. Kantare placed the bone inside the circle and began to speak in a language no one understood. His body trembled. His eyes rolled back. And then, the fire went out on its own. The wind stopped. And time froze. For 5 seconds, no one could move. The birds hung suspended in the air. The leaves, motionless in mid-flight. The whole world held its breath. When everything returned to normal, Kantare was lying on the ground. Naima ran to him. Balaki cried out his son's name in a trembling voice. Kantare, pale, with cracked lips, whispered, "I saw what comes next. Time, it wants to forget. But if we forget, the soul dies." Tears streamed from the old boy's eyes. For the first time, he was afraid. "They will come after what I left here. And when you come, you need to remember who I was." That night, Kantare slept, and he never woke up again. His body was missing the next morning. There were no traces, no smell, no weight, just the circle drawn on the ground, still warm, and the black bone now broken in two. The village was plunged into a strange mourning. It was no ordinary death pain. It was as if someone had taken a piece of each of their memories. Balaki began to forget his son's face. Naima no longer remembered the sound of her voice. The healer Mamur began to stammer prayers that he had previously known by heart. Kantare had warned, "If we forget, the soul dies." On the 13th moon, strangers began to appear on the outskirts of the village. Men in gray robes, women with covered eyes. They asked about the old boy who talked to the weather. But Kantare was no longer there, and the prophecy said that if one of the strangers touched the broken bone, the cycle of loss would begin again. Now the village needs to decide, bury what's left, or protect the circle of memory with one's own life. But there was still one last chance. A seed left by Kantare, hidden in someone who didn't even know what he was carrying. And that seed is about to germinate. The morning dawned gray. The sky seemed covered by a wet cloth, and the wind carried the smell of old earth, the kind that has seen a lot and yet tells nothing. Since Kantare's disappearance, the village of Tangal has had its laughter erased. The children stopped playing, the drums were no longer playing, and the old people began to forget simple things. The names of the grandchildren, the words of the songs, where they buried the secrets. But there was one exception. Little Isu, just 9 years old, began to hear whispers. At first he thought it was wind. But one day, while he was drawing water from the well, he heard, "Hey, you saw what he left, right?" She turned around. There was no one. "Look inside the old drum. What's cracked?" Frightened but curious, she went to the abandoned drum behind Mamur's tent. There, he found a piece of black bone, wrapped in a red cloth, with her name written on it. Isu's eyes widened. How did he? And then the voice came clearer. "You are my living memory." Isu ran to Balaki and Naima, trembling, holding the bone. I heard Kantare. He spoke to me." Balaki took 2 steps back. "No, that's not possible." Naima held the girl's face with both hands, looking deeply. "What did he say?" "That I am his memory. That what he left is in me." At that moment, Mamur hurriedly entered the tent. They're back, the strangers with their eyes covered. And this time they're armed. At the village's wooden gate, 3 tall figures in gray cloaks waited. They didn't step on the ground, they floated, as if they didn't belong in the now. The one in front spoke in a deep voice. Time is a river, villagers, and that river has been diverted. You hide something that doesn't belong to you. Deliver the seed, or the chain will be broken. The village warriors prepared spears, but they knew it would be no use. In the midst of the chaos, old Kuiate, not understanding anything, left the tent asking, "Who turned off my stove?" "It was my pot of beans." Everyone looked at him in silence. Even the gray beings hesitated. You don't do that with other people's beans. You even have to respect the weather. A muffled laugh escaped one of the children, and for a moment the fear receded. Isu approached the line of the sacred circle. He placed the piece of bone on the ground, closed his eyes, and began to speak in the same language that Kantare had used. Mamor, frightened, murmured, She has the same gift." And then the gray figures began to dissolve into the air. Not in anger, but in respect. Their leader made a final bow. The memory has been planted again. The cycle continues, until the next oblivion. And they disappeared. Balaki fell to his knees, not in pain, but in relief. Naima hugged Isu, crying. Mamor looked up at the sky and said, "Kantare, you knew. You always knew that memory needed a new body." But not everything was resolved. That same night, Issa dreamed of the baobab of silence. And in it, Kantare was waiting for her. You still have 3 cycles to complete. What comes next will be even harder, because forgetting sometimes is easier than remembering. Time in Tangal was never the same again, but something deeper had changed. People began to remember things they thought they had forgotten, old things, ancestral things, words and rituals that had been neglected by the rush of the modern world. Issa became more than the guardian of Kantare's memories. She was the link between the past and the future. And the village of Tangal, with its new connection to time, no longer lived as before. On the last day of a full moon, Balaki and Naima stood before the baobab of silence, where Kantare's memory had always remained alive. Isu, now a young woman with deep, wise eyes, approached the gigantic trunk and placed her hand on the wrinkled bark. "I know what is coming, Mother. I know what is coming, Father. But nothing can stop time, not even fear." And then she smiled. A serene smile, like someone who carries the entire weight of existence, and yet does not fear the future. Memory is not about what you keep. It is about what you leave for others to keep. And the baobab, with its twisted branches, bowed before the truth. The cycle was complete, but the path of memory still stretched ahead, like a river that never stops flowing. Now you know the story of Kantare, the boy who was born old, but who brought with him the key to keeping the village's memory alive. But like the story of the village of Tangal, our journey does not end here. If you enjoyed this epic journey, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. Together, we can keep stories alive, like the seeds we plant in the soil of our hearts. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers, because there are many more to come. Until next time, and remember, memories are what define us.